Asterisk the question hovered unspoken in the Today Show's quiet, candle-warm studio. What happens when a woman who built her entire public identity on empathy and sunshine sits across from a guest who seems determined to turn every question into a battlefield? Asterisk Hoda Kotb had interviewed everyone: presidents, grieving families, celebrities in crisis, but tonight felt different even before the cameras turned on. A special, intimate one-on-one. A rare, audience-free conversation meant to dive deeper than headlines. She expected honesty, reflection, maybe even healing. Asterisk. What she didn't expect was the rising wave of tension that began even before she opened her mouth. Asterisk. The studio looked nothing like a typical morning show set. It resembled a friend's living room, curated for comfort, a place where people should have felt safe enough to soften. Two armchairs faced each other over a low round table, with a deep blue tray in the center. Warm light glowed off pale wood shelves lined with ceramics, simple line art frames, and plants trailing like green waterfalls. Two slender podcast microphones hung between the chairs to catch every subtle breath. Asterisk Hoda sat on the left, grounding herself in the familiar weight of her gray blazer and crisp white blouse. Her patchwork denim fell in relaxed folds over her crossed legs. She inhaled slowly, the kind of breath you take before stepping into cold water, and smiled toward the lens. Asterisk, good evening. Everybody, she said, her voice steady and familiar. The very sound of comfort to millions. Tonight, we're doing something a little different. No panel, no audience. Just a one-on-one conversation. She turned to face the woman opposite her. Joining me is Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, actress, mother, advocate, and someone whose story has sparked conversations across the world. Asterisk Meghan sat upright in her cream-colored chair, wearing a black turtleneck and tailored ivory trousers. Her dark hair spilled in glossy waves over one shoulder. She didn't smile. She smirked, just slightly, like someone amused that this was the arena chosen for her. Asterisk hi, she said with a small nod. Thanks for organizing all of this. A polite sentence, but the underlying tone was unmistakably cool. The tally light blinked red. They were live. Asterisk Hoda folded her hands gently over her knee. So, Meghan, she began warmly, you and Harry have now been in California for a few years. When you wake up in the morning, sun shining, kids laughing, how does it feel to know your life is so different from what it was in London? Asterisk a soft question. A generous one. A question meant to let her breathe. Meghan exhaled sharply, almost incredulous. How does it feel? She repeated, brows lifting. That's a little reductive, isn't it? Asterisk Hoda blinked once. Reductive? In what way? Asterisk it assumes the most interesting thing about my life is location, Meghan replied, gesturing lightly. England, California. Labels on a map. I'm not a postcard you can compare side by side. I didn't move, I transformed my life. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. People ask, how does it feel? Because it's easier than understanding why someone walks away from a broken system. Asterisk a subtle tremor ran through the room. The first visible crack in the atmosphere. Asterisk Hoda kept her poise. I hear you, but I think people are curious about the human side. Waking up to a quieter life, away from palace schedules. Asterisk, you mean away from scrutiny? Meghan cut in sharply. Let's call it what it is. Producer behind the cameras stiffened. All right, Hoda said lightly. Away from scrutiny. Asterisk Meghan nodded as though granting permission. It feels like finally being allowed to exist without asking permission. I don't wake up thinking I'm in California now. I wake up thinking, thank God I'm not there anymore. People romanticize the palace. They have no idea what it's like to be devoured from the inside out. Asterisk. Silence. Thick as smoke. Asterisk. When you say devoured. Hoda asked gently. Do you mean the institution? The press? Or asterisk? Yes. Meghan interrupted again. All of it. Asterisk, a hint of impatience slid into her voice. And I'm tired of dissecting it for people who already decided what to believe. Asterisk. Something flickered in Hoda's expression. Hurt? Frustration? She tucked a stray hair behind her ear and continued. Asterisk, you agreed to sit with us tonight, she said quietly. So people out there are listening. You're choosing to share. Asterisk, I'm sharing on my terms, Meghan corrected. Not the palaces, not the tabloids, and certainly not breakfast televisions. Asterisk, breakfast television. The words landed like an insult dropped into a glass of water. Asterisk Hoda's smile was still on her face, but slightly strained at the edges. Asterisk, she pivoted, softly, professionally. Asked Meghan whether she'd say anything differently now, with more time and space. Meghan rejected the question immediately, accusing people of wanting her to be softer, quieter, more palatable. Nothing in her tone suggested vulnerability, only an edge sharpened by years of conflict. Asterisk. We all sometimes look back and wish we framed something differently. Hoda replied gently. Asterisk, maybe that's the difference between you and me, Meghan said coldly. You're trained to frame things. I'm done packaging my experience. The air seemed to tighten. So Hoda tried Harry. Asterisk, what are you proudest of in his journey? She asked. Asterisk, Meghan's reply snapped like a branch. Harry's not a project. He's not someone I rescued. Asterisk, I didn't say that. Asterisk. No, but that's how people frame it. As if he had no agency. He chose me. Asterisk, her voice softened only once, when she spoke of him walking away from the institution. Then it hardened again. Asterisk, you don't applaud someone for leaving an unhealthy relationship. You just support them. Hoda nodded, though her smile thinned again. But the tension kept rising. Meghan's responses kept landing like challenges rather than answers. Asterisk, then came the break. Cameras went off. The silence felt heavier than the segment. Asterisk, is she serious right now? A crew member whispered. No one answered. When they returned on air, Hoda tried to shift the conversation toward motherhood gentle ground, or so she thought. But Meghan shut it down instantly, pushing back on the implication that her children had anything but a grounded life, accusing strangers of projecting narratives onto them. Asterisk. I don't manage attention, Meghan said coolly. Attention manages itself. Asterisk. Hoda tried again. Privacy, advocacy, identity, anything that might soften the conversation. Meghan pushed back harder, her tone clipped, controlled. Cold. Asterisk, you keep saying curious, she said when Hoda mentioned viewer interest. Curious isn't an excuse to pry. Asterisk. Hoda's eyes dimmed slightly, but she pressed on. She asked what life in California meant to Meghan. What brought her joy? Meghan nearly laughed. You think I'm here to talk about smoothie bowls? Morning routines. I don't do fluff, Hoda. Asterisk. The words landed like a slap. Hoda's breath caught, but she kept smiling. Asterisk, that wasn't my intent, she whispered. Asterisk, intent doesn't erase impact. Asterisk, this time the crew physically recoiled. The tension became something living, breathing, watching. Asterisk. Hoda looked at Meghan. A rare crack in her professionalism. Asterisk, I'm trying to understand why everything I ask feels like an attack, she said softly. Asterisk, maybe, Meghan replied. Voice icy, because interviews are rarely what they claim to be. A punch, disguised as wisdom. Hoda inhaled shakily. I'd like to think this one is. Asterisk. Meghan didn't answer. Just crossed her arms. But the show wasn't over. Trying again. Hoda asked an open-ended question. What does the world misunderstand most about you? Asterisk. Everything, Meghan replied, without hesitation. My choices, my voice, my purpose. People create a version of me that's easier to criticize. This must feel painful, Hoda offered. It's not painful, Meghan snapped. It's predictable. Asterisk. And in that moment, every person, watching, crew, host, audience at home felt the same realization settle in. Asterisk. Meghan wasn't reacting to the questions. Asterisk, she was reacting to years of wounds, only some of which belonged to Hoda. The interview wasn't a conversation. It was a collision. Asterisk. A collision of guardedness and gentleness. Asterisk of practiced empathy meeting sharpened defense. Asterisk of a host trying to build bridges and a guest prepared for war. Asterix 2 more segments still stretched ahead. And yet everyone in the room already knew, the most raw. Revealing moment of the night wasn't going to come from Meghan's answers. Asterisk, it was coming from Hoda's eyes, steady, patient, hurting, and still trying. Still trying to understand a woman who didn't seem to want to be understood at all.